Finally, Rosanne Cash has opened up about June Carter, the lady who became one of the most significant figures in her life and who captured the heart of her father, Johnny Cash. She is 70 years old. You must be aware of Rosanne's familial background in order to appreciate the significance of her remarks. Rosanne was raised in a musical household. Her stepmother, June Carter, was from the renowned Carter family, dubbed the first family of country music. Her father was already well known in the country music industry, and their music has shaped the nation into what it is today. Their names are ingrained in American culture. History was more than simply what you read in a book in Rosanne's upbringing. It was at her dinner table, in her living room, and on every stage her family performed. But that history also included conflicts, demands, and a complex blend of quiet and love that Rosanne has only recently decided to share with the world. Rosanne Cash's childhood was unusual from most girls, since she was surrounded by trouble, fame, and history all the time. Johnny Cash and his first wife, Vivian Liberto, welcomed Rosanne into the world in 1955. Her formative years were filled with both glitz and mayhem. Her father was a budding artist who was revolutionizing country music with his bold style and powerful voice. Behind the celebrity, however, was a family that was frequently split up by Johnny's frequent absences, travels, and increasing drug and alcohol misuse. For Rosanne, this meant a father who was enormous at times and agonizingly distant at others. A well-liked man who struggled to care for his family, who were his greatest need. Rosanne was still a young child when June Carter arrived, attempting to make sense of a world where her family was unhappy, but others rejoiced in her father's celebrity. At first, June was just a newcomer to her dad's life, who seemed to bring both joy and trouble. She wasn't the well-known country singer that everyone adored. According to Rosanne, her initial ideas were complicated. In addition to being perplexed and jealous, she observed June's sense of humor, her ability to command a room, and her intense affection for her father. Dealing with obligations that most children could never fully handle was part of living under the shadow of the Carter-Cash marriage. As a daughter, I frequently questioned her place in my family's evolving roles. While Johnny struggled with his inner issues, Rosanne struggled with the weight of the Cash name, her father's celebrity, and June, who soon rose to the top of the family hierarchy. With two country music legends joining forces, their voices harmonizing on stage, and their love story being shared throughout the nation, it may have appeared to be a fairy tale marriage from the outside. When Rosanne was younger, however, it was a daily battle to strike the correct balance between comfort and uncertainty, respect and rage. She gradually began to view June differently as the years went by. Not only as the lady who captured her father's affection, but also as a bulwark in a household that may have collapsed in her absence. Even so, those emotions were concealed by a lack of communication, unsaid conflicts, and the wobbly rhythm of a daughter attempting to establish herself in the greatest country music family ever. It wasn't the cheers of sold-out audiences or the glossy magazine covers that gave Rosanne Cash the impression that she knew June Carter. It was the ordinary moments when a woman joined a dysfunctional family. June was well known enough on her own. She was a Carter from birth and came from the foremost family in country music. Everything she achieved was influenced by her biting humor, quick wit, and strong stage presence. She was seen as intriguing and appealing by those outside her family, a woman who could brighten any space with her grin. When Rosanne was younger, however, she was someone different. Her father felt conflicted emotions because she had captured his heart during a period when his own marriage was failing. Rosanne would later describe her initial feelings toward June as a mixture of respect and skepticism. On the one hand, June was undoubtedly vivacious. She had the ability to uplift Johnny Cash when he appeared to be about to collapse, make a crowd laugh, and make people feel comfortable. It was impossible for Rosanne to ignore the fact that her father was growing more distant. He seemed to have little time for anything else because he was already preoccupied with drugs and fame, and now he was also enamored. For a child who still desired stability, June was both reassuring and distressing. Roseanne struggled to comprehend the paradox. She recalled how a joke or a song could soothe everyone, and how June's laughter filled the house. However, those characteristics occasionally gave her the impression that her own mother had passed away and been replaced by an unfamiliar person. Roseanne found it difficult to distinguish June's genuine kindness from her own sorrow, even as June's affection for her deepened with age. Roseanne was still scarred from those initial encounters when she was younger. She occasionally questioned whether June was attempting to win her father's affection, thought that June's charm set her apart, and silently questioned her place in the world. Long before Roseanne could look back with clarity and acknowledge the truths that time would eventually reveal, these early impressions, along with the complications of family and fame, would remain with her for years and influence her perception of her stepmother. Life in the Cash family was anything but ordinary. June Carter became a constant in it, and things changed in ways Roseanne Cash would not fully comprehend for years. Outside of the country music industry, Johnny and June were seen as the ideal couple, the perfect balance of love and song. When they weren't together, though, their family life was a jumble of demands, love, and chaos. June swiftly established herself as the pillar that supported the marriage and the entire family around a man whose notoriety was both a liability and an asset. She served as a barrier against the mayhem Johnny frequently brought home, as well as a mother, guardian, and police officer. June was always there and never gave up, and Roseanne grew up with her in that environment. Even though Johnny's drug use and absences created erratic storms all around her, June believed in discipline, structure, and faith. June could be kind and compassionate. She was the kind that made sure everyone was loved, cared for, and fed. However, she was able to be firm and demand order and respect from a house that was becoming chaotic. When Roseanne was younger, she found it difficult to comprehend this dichotomy. June seen her powerful stepmother carrying loads that few could fathom, but occasionally her strength seemed like tension, which served as one another reminder of how her existence differed from that of a typical youngster. June's unwavering devotion for Johnny was something Roseanne could never lose sight of. She frequently witnessed her stepmother rescuing her father from the brink. When fame, drugs, and alcohol threatened to kill him, she was there to support him. It was frightening and impressive how dedicated they were. Later in life, Roseanne struggled to compare her own relationships to that degree of sacrifice and devotion, but they were still real. There were moments when Roseanne thought the two tall persons in the home were drowning out her speech. One was a global celebrity, and the other was a Carter. So they were equally heavy. Family meals may be filled with joy and music one night, followed by silence and silent rage the next. Roseanne was concerned, but she understood that June was the one who held the family together and prevented it from disintegrating. In hindsight, Roseanne admits that many times what she perceived as conflict was actually her own perplexity as a youngster caught between rage and respect. June was always there, even if she wasn't always correct. The family remained united, despite the difficult experiences they had while living with Johnny Cash. As she grew older, Roseanne Cash felt compelled to pursue a career in singing, but it was also frightening. She was, in a sense, composed of melody. This comes naturally to her being a member of the Carter family and the daughter of Johnny Cash. However, that same gift also carried a great deal of responsibility. You were a member of the first country music family when your mother was a Carter and your father was the Man in Black. How else could somebody be noticed? Roseanne claimed that she frequently feared being perceived as a copycat rather than an original artist. She began her own career quietly, before people began to compare her to the giants to whom she was related by blood and marriage. She wanted to prove to herself that she was independent. Conversely, June Carter was a constant example of what greatness actually looked like and a source of strength. Roseanne was never forced to sing by June. Above all, she advised her to be authentic and discover her own voice. However, Roseanne was enough aware of the high standard by her presence. Roseanne has described instances in which June offered her firm but gentle guidance. "People may overlook a missed note, but never a lack of honesty," June would tell her, adding that music was about being honest and not perfect. Recalling those lessons, Roseanne applied them to develop her own singing philosophy. Later, she would receive recognition for the profundity and sincerity of her songs. Nevertheless, Roseanne occasionally felt the influence of June and questioned whether her accomplishments would ever be recognized as her own, or if the Cash Carter family would always be associated with them. Roseanne made a concerted effort to distinguish her identity from her family name when she initially released her songs. However, she never lost sight of the significance of her upbringing and made time for her own artistic endeavors. She constantly watched with delight, but June never interfered and encouraged her from a distance. According to Roseanne's later statements, June never attempted to dictate Roseanne's music or force her to conform to a certain style, despite their private issues. June, on the other hand, allowed her to stumble, fall, and rise as she saw fit. It took Roseanne many years before she realized how important it was to help without getting in the way. June appeared to be taking a back seat at the time, unwilling to become involved. She was actually giving Roseanne the greatest gift a mother could offer her, the freedom to be herself, without worrying about what other people would think of her. It was difficult to avoid comparison, even within a family. In hindsight, Roseanne claims that June showed her that a family's heritage need not be a rigid one. You can construct something on top of this in your own way. June Carter was a blessing in Roseanne Cash's life because she loved, supported, and mentored her. However, there were periods when they didn't express their feelings to each other, and their relationship also had its ups and downs. According to Roseanne, she felt constantly pushed aside as a child growing up in a two-star household. June was the kind of girl who always had people's attention because of her keen sense of humor, boundless energy, and firm faith. And for a young lady who is still figuring herself out, that presence can be too much. Roseanne was frequently torn between envy and admiration. Although she appreciated June's assistance in keeping her dad's life together, she thought her own mother had been marginalized. Because some things were rarely stated aloud in a household that was built on performance, music, and public image, these emotions became more intense in silence. Ultimately, Roseanne acknowledged that a lot of her resentment toward June was actually focused on herself and her desperate need to fit in with a family that appeared too large for her voice. June, on the other hand, had little time to carefully manage the delicate emotions of a stepdaughter since she was constantly struggling to keep Johnny alive, sober, and present. Roseanne thought no one could notice her suffering, and she sometimes felt forgotten. As time passed, she came to the conclusion that June was simply too busy to cope with an impossible life and an impossible man. Nevertheless, their relationship was influenced by the issues they chose not to discuss, which intertwined themes of devotion and love with resentment and misunderstanding. Because she regarded June as a danger to her father's affection, rather as the lady who was keeping him alive for everyone, Roseanne has previously felt that she was too harsh on her when she was younger. It wasn't until I grew up and had some space that I recognized that. However, the tension and quiet were real at that precise time. Roseanne claims that she carried some of those struggles into adulthood, keeping her true feelings to herself out of fear of rejection or condemnation. Over time, she came to see that June's strictness was a result of love, a coping mechanism for the chaos, and that what she perceived as coldness was actually strength. Roseanne, who is now in her 70s and able to reflect on her hardships, has made the decision to discuss them candidly, not as charges, but as admissions. She discussed her weakness, her childhood mistakes, and the silent battles that shaped her into the person she is now. Because Roseanne Cash perceived June Carter as both a support system and a competitor for her father's attention, she struggled for a long time to decide how she felt about her. However, as she grew older and more mature, she started to realize the truth that had always existed. June used the only method she knew to express her love for her. June Carter was not a woman who constantly showered others with love or wasted words. She demonstrated her love via deeds and gestures that Roseanne frequently overlooked until years later, when she gave them some more thought. In addition to checking on the kids to make sure they were secure, taken care of, and reminded that they were important. Even when their dad's demons took control, June would occasionally stay up all night with Johnny during his worst moments. June would encourage Roseanne to follow her instincts and have faith in her own voice, even if she didn't believe in herself. Sometimes it was as simple as concealing a supportive note. They would occasionally discuss how June would remind her that being great doesn't imply striving to please everybody, but rather standing by your convictions. They were always there, and founded on a loyalty that Roseanne eventually came to view as motherhood, even though they didn't always speak the loud things about love that Roseanne had desired as a girl. Over time, Roseanne discovered that June was more than just her stepmother. In all significant aspects, she resembled a second mother. It was difficult to comprehend. After having her own children, and realizing that love can take numerous forms, Roseanne gradually fell in love with him. Some are quiet, some are not quite right, but they are all real. She recalled how her stepmother's presence could make even the worst day bearable, and how June's laughter would fill a home that was all too frequently filled with quiet and melancholy. Even when Roseanne became upset with June would always be there, show concern for her, and let her know she was loved in her own unique way. Roseanne, who is now 70 years old, has openly acknowledged that what she originally believed to be control or distance was actually the armor of a woman bearing an unbearable burden. Her heart was large enough to adore her husband and the children he brought with him, despite her defensiveness. Roseanne understood that she didn't need to earn June's love. It was already hers. That thing had been there all along, unwavering, even if it took her a lifetime to comprehend it completely. When June Carter Cash passed away in May 2003, country music lovers around the globe were devastated. But for Roseanne Cash, her grief was more nuanced than that of most others. June was at once several different things: a guardian, stepmother, instructor, parent figure, and eventually a second mother. And Roseanne felt both grateful and sorry for her when she was gone. "I'm grateful that June gave you strength over the years, and that you helped Johnny get through difficult times when no one else could. And I apologize for the decades of silence and the words that were never spoken," as Roseanne attempted to express how much June meant to her. In the days following June's passing, Roseanne claimed to have felt as though the earth beneath her family had permanently shifted. Her passing had left Johnny devastated, and his health was rapidly deteriorating. The weight of an unfillable void was felt by the entire family. At that moment, Roseanne realized how much June's presence had bound them all together. It was more than the strength, the music, or the laughs. June was reassured that she would manage to maintain order no matter how chaotic things got. Without her, there was absolute silence. Roseanne began to reminisce about the past, searching for the moments she had missed when June's love had manifested itself in deeds rather than words. She reflected on the ways in which June had supported her without her even realizing it until it was too late to express her gratitude. After losing June, Roseanne had to confront her emotions in a way she had avoided for a long time. June's impact on her life became painfully clear to her. In addition to her musical endeavors, she demonstrates her strength as a woman. According to Roseanne, death has a way of bringing to light things that we might have overlooked when a person was alive. She could easily see the truth. June Carter loved her, believed in her, and raised her. She felt better after that realization. But she was also saddened by the time she had missed, because she had been too silent or too proud to express what she now wished she had. Following June's passing, Roseanne became more open about her stepmother. She was recognized as the lady who had supported her family through the dull, routine moments when things were going well, rather than as a performer or star who was adored by all. She was grateful that she could finally express how much June had meant to her, despite the fact that she was still depressed. Roseanne Cash, now 70 years old, has finally found the confidence to express her true feelings regarding June Carter. she finally told everyone the truth that had been buried deep within her for decades. She felt better after that realization, but she was also saddened by the time she had missed, because she had been too silent or too proud to express what she now wished she had. Following June's passing, Roseanne became more open about her stepmother. She was recognized as the lady who had supported her family through the dull, routine moments when things were going well, rather than as a performer or star who was adored by all. She was grateful that she could finally express how much June had meant to her, despite the fact that she was still depressed. Roseanne Cash, now 70 years old, has finally found the confidence to express her true feelings regarding June Carter. She finally told everyone the truth that had been buried deep within her for decades. Time, age, and her own lengthy life journey have all helped to soften the jagged edges of her early memories. She now views June as a woman who understands what it is to love, sacrifice, and persevere, rather than as a daughter battling for space. June was more than just a mother, Roseanne says now. When celebrity and drug misuse could have destroyed her family, her strength kept them together. She recalls June's ability to keep a room together, her faith, and her humor. She can now categorically state that June loved her without any strings attached. It was solid, steady, and true. The 70-year-old Roseanne claims that she used to hold her tongue a lot out of fear of criticism. Despite the fact that she had assisted in raising the child but had not given birth, she was scared to tell a lady how much she owed her. Roseanne sees June's lessons everywhere, especially when she considers her own children and grandchildren. She has learned to forgive herself and others, and she demonstrates her love for her family by managing her personal life and career. For a long time, fans have been curious about Roseanne's true feelings about her stepmother. Her current remarks are surprising, yet respectful at the same time. She writes candidly about their relationship's issues, arguments, and angry moments, rather than trying to disguise them, demonstrating that love isn't always simple and that family ties are frequently forged via both love and struggle. Roseanne Cash has at last accepted the influence of June Carter, not just as a country music icon, but also as the person who gave her father the will to persevere and Roseanne the courage to discover her own voice. At the age of 70, she finally came clean about June Carter being more than simply her stepmother. Carter was her guardian, her teacher, and, in the purest form of the word, her mother.